Some men spend their whole lives building a wall to keep their family safe. I spent 31 years building mine, brick by brick, and it took my daughter 4 words to knock the whole thing down. You want to know what real fear feels like? It's standing in your garage at midnight, staring at a phone that refuses to ring, absolutely certain your own daughter is lying in a ditch somewhere off I-40. That was me, 63 years old, a grown man with gray in his beard, gripping a socket wrench I wasn't even using anymore, just holding it because my hands needed something to do besides shake. My name is Walter Pierce. Folks around here call me Walt. I spent 32 years running Pierce & Sons Millwork out of Asheville, North Carolina, building custom cabinetry for half the kitchens in Buncombe County. My own father ran off when I was 9 years old. Just packed a duffel bag one Sunday morning and never came back. My mother raised 3 kids on a waitress's wages, and I swore, standing in that trailer as a boy, that if I ever had children, they would never once wonder if their father loved them. So when Melissa was born, and then her brother Cody 4 years after her, I made myself a promise. These kids will never know what it feels like to be an afterthought. I kept that promise for 26 years. And then, on a Wednesday in early June, that promise turned into the worst 3 days of my life. Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, I appreciate you stopping by. If you've been with me a while, you already know how these stories go, and trust me, this one's worth the whole ride. Go ahead and hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what state you're watching from. I read every single one. It started with a phone call from a bank, not my daughter. Boring stuff. The kind of call you'd take standing at the kitchen counter half listening while you finish your coffee. A loan officer named Denise from First Carolina Trust, letting me know the co-signed auto loan on Melissa's SUV was 90 days past due and about to go to collections. My name was on that loan. My credit, my signature, sitting underneath hers like scaffolding nobody ever notices until it's gone. I hung up with Denise and called Melissa right away. Simple enough, 30 seconds. Tell her to get current on the payment before it wrecked both our credit scores. Straight to voicemail. Fine. She's probably at work. She managed a dental office over in Hendersonville, always had her phone on silent during appointments. I left a message. Hey, sweetheart, it's Dad. Bank called about the truck payment. Give me a ring when you get a minute. Nothing urgent. Went back to my shop, finished sanding a walnut cabinet door I'd been fussing over all week. Next morning, nothing. I called again. Voicemail again. Now here's where I'll admit the first little needle of worry poked through. Melissa doesn't always call back same day. She's a busy girl, but she doesn't go a full 24 hours without at least a text. Never has, not since she got her first phone at 16. So I called Cody, figured he'd know if his sister was traveling or sick or what. Straight to voicemail too. Both my kids, same day. I told myself it was nothing. Kids get busy. I left another message trying to keep the worry out of my voice. Guys, this is Dad again. Really need one of you to call me back. Nothing's wrong on my end. Just need to talk to your sister about something. My wife Donna noticed it at dinner that night. 34 years of marriage, and that woman can read a shift in my shoulders before I even know it's there myself. You've barely touched your chicken, she said, nodding at the plate I'd been pushing around for 10 minutes. What's eating you, Walt? The kids aren't answering, I told her. Neither one since yesterday morning. She waved her fork like it was nothing. They're grown adults with their own lives, honey. Melissa's probably just swamped at work. She was probably right. I knew she was probably right. So why did my chest feel like somebody was sitting on it? Day 3 is when it stopped being a nuisance and started being a nightmare. I'd called Melissa 9 times by then. 9. Called Cody 6 times. Every single one dying in a voicemail box that felt more like a coffin every hour that passed. I stopped eating lunch. Stopped sleeping past 3 in the morning. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw flashing lights on the side of a highway, saw a state trooper standing on my porch turning his hat over in his hands. I've buried my own mother. I know exactly what that knock sounds like before it ever happens. That night, I sat on the edge of the bed at 1 in the morning, phone in my hand, thumb hovering over Melissa's name for what felt like the 100th time. Donna sat up behind me. Walt, come to bed. Something's wrong, Donna. My voice cracked in a way it hadn't since my mother's funeral. 3 days. Neither one of them. That's not busy. That's not normal. Maybe they're together somewhere with bad signal. Both phones? Donna? For 3 straight days? I turned and looked at her, and I watched it land on her face too, that same cold drop in the stomach I'd been carrying around for 72 hours. Pack a bag, I said. We're driving down to Hendersonville. Something's wrong. I can feel it in my bones. She didn't argue. That's the thing about 3 decades of marriage, you learn real quick which fights are worth having and which ones you just get up and pack a bag for. We were on the road by 6 the next morning, coffee thermos between us, fog still sitting low over the Blue Ridge, like something out of a postcard I couldn't appreciate right then. Donna kept saying the same thing on a loop the whole drive, like she was trying to talk herself into believing it. They're fine, Walt. There's probably some silly explanation, phones got stolen or something. Then why hasn't anybody used a landline, a work phone, anything? I said, both hands choking the steering wheel. 3 days. 15 calls between us. Not one text back. She went quiet after that. Some part of her knew, same as some part of me knew, that silly explanation wasn't waiting on the other end of this drive. Melissa's house sat up on a hill outside town, one of those new-build subdivisions with the fake stone fronts and the 2-car garages, the kind of place that made a millworker feel a little out of his depth even though I'd built half the cabinets in that neighborhood myself. I pulled the truck into her driveway behind a car I didn't recognize, a shiny black Audi that definitely wasn't hers. My hands were shaking when I climbed out, and that's when I heard it. Music. Laughter, loud and easy, spilling out an open window. A cluster of balloons tied to the mailbox post, bobbing every time a breeze came through. That's not the sound of tragedy, I thought, and for half a second relief hit me so hard my knees nearly buckled underneath me. Thank God. Thank God they're all right. I knocked. The music dipped. Footsteps. The door swung open, and there was my daughter, Melissa, a drink sweating in her hand, a grin frozen halfway between surprised and something a whole lot colder. That grin didn't stay confused for long. It curdled fast, the way milk curdles when you leave it out too long in July. What are you two doing here? Not Dad, not Mom, not even is everything okay. What are you two doing here? Like Donna and I were a couple of solicitors she'd have to figure out how to get rid of politely. I tried to keep my voice steady even though my whole chest felt like it was folding in on itself. I've been calling for 3 days straight, I said. You didn't answer. I thought something happened to you. Donna pushed past me, hands flying up to cover her mouth, and for 1 second I watched 30-something years of motherhood pour out of her all at once. Oh, thank God, she gasped. Baby, you're okay. We've been calling and calling. We were sick with worry. We thought something terrible had. Melissa cut her off before she even finished. She rolled her eyes, a full, dramatic, exhausted roll, the kind a teenager gives you when you ask her to unload the dishwasher. We didn't answer because we didn't want to talk to you, she said, her voice flat and sharp and final. Stop calling us, Dad. We have our own lives now. You're smothering us. Just leave us alone. Leave us alone. 4 words. I've been hit by plenty of things in 63 years. A falling oak limb once, a table saw kickback that nearly took 2 fingers, my own father's absence for 54 straight years. None of it landed the way those 4 words landed, standing on my own daughter's front step. I stood there in the driveway, balloons bobbing on that mailbox behind her like the whole street was mocking me, and I genuinely did not have a single word ready. 26 years. Every soccer game, every skinned knee, every 3A, M fever, and this was the return on the investment. Before I could find my footing, a man stepped up beside her, tall, tanned, holding 2 flutes of champagne, wearing the kind of watch that costs more than my first truck. His whole posture radiating a smug ease I'd only ever seen on realtors in commercials. Honestly, he said, handing Melissa one of the glasses, do you two ever call ahead? Donna blinked at him, completely lost. I'm sorry, who exactly are you? The man's smile widened. He reached over and took Melissa's left hand, raised it slow and deliberate, like a lawyer presenting evidence to a jury. A diamond caught the porch light and threw it right back into our faces. I'm Brett, he said, Melissa's fiancé, and today happens to be our engagement party, which the 2 of you are currently interrupting by showing up unannounced. Interrupting. Unannounced. I heard the words, but they didn't fully register right away, like my brain flat out refused delivery on a package it already knew was going to hurt too bad to open. Our daughter, engaged, and we found out standing on a porch being told we were interrupting it. 34 years of marriage, and I had never once seen Donna's face do what it did in that moment, like somebody had reached into her chest with a bare hand and squeezed. I want to pause right here because this is the part where folks who've never lived through something like this would say, Walt, just turn around and walk back to your truck. Don't make a scene. And believe me, part of me was already halfway there in my head. But another part of me, the part that had driven 2 hours that morning genuinely believing his daughter might be dead in a ditch somewhere, that part needed to understand. How does a man go from he's calling because he loves us to he's smothering us with no conversation in between? I found out real quick. That was the moment that broke something loose in my chest. Not the eye roll, not the fiancé's attitude, not even that champagne glass held up like a trophy. It was knowing they'd seen my name light up their screens 15 times and made the choice, on purpose, to let their own father sit up nights picturing car wrecks. That's not independence. That's cruelty wearing a return address. Cody appeared behind his sister right about then, holding a plate of barbecue, and groaned the second he laid eyes on us. Actually groaned, like we were a chore he'd hoped he was finished with. Are you serious right now? He set the plate down hard enough to rattle the silverware on it. You two couldn't just let us have this one day, could you? Something steadied itself inside me right then. The fear was starting to turn into something else. I don't know that I'd call it anger yet. Maybe just clarity. Son, I didn't come here to ruin anything, I said, keeping my voice level. The bank called about your sister's truck payment, 90 days past due, and since my name's on that loan, same as hers, I needed to talk to her before it went to collections and wrecked both our credit. I called her, then I called you, and neither one of you answered for 3 straight days. Cody let out a laugh, short and mocking, the kind with no actual humor in it, just contempt wearing humor's jacket. Oh, here we go, the rescue mission. He shook his head slow, like he was talking to a child instead of the man who'd co-signed his sister's truck loan. You think because your name's on a piece of paper you get to track our every move? This is exactly why Melissa moved 45 minutes away from the house, Dad. We wanted some distance from all the hovering. 45 minutes, on purpose, to get some distance. I drove 2 hours that morning because I loved them too much to sit still. They'd put miles between us because they loved me too little to stay close. Melissa nodded along like her brother had just delivered gospel, then leaned back against the doorframe, drink still in hand. Exactly, she said. You always use money and fixing things to keep tabs on us, to feel important. I make good money at the office now. I don't need you hovering over me acting like some kind of hero. She paused, and here's the part that really cracked something open in my chest. We saw your calls, Dad. We watched your name pop up over and over, and we didn't pick up on purpose. We wanted to see how long it'd take you to finally get the hint and back off. Purposefully. Not we were busy, not our phones died. Purposefully. For 3 days I'd sat awake, picturing every possible tragedy a father's mind can invent, and my daughter had been sitting somewhere watching my name light up her screen, deciding, on purpose, to let her own father suffer just to teach him a lesson. Brett tossed his hair back, already bored with the whole exchange. Yeah, we're trying to celebrate with people who actually matter today, he said. We don't need the old-fashioned drama out here on the porch. He gestured down toward the driveway like he was waving off a delivery driver who'd shown up at the wrong address. You two should probably head on out. Head on out. On my own daughter's front step. From a man I'd known for 4 minutes. I want you to understand something about me, because it matters for everything that came after. I didn't raise my voice. I've thought about that plenty since. Whether some part of them needed to see me break the way they'd just broken their mother right there in front of a stranger. But that's not who I am. My own father never stuck around long enough to teach me how to handle a moment like that. So I had to figure it out on my own. Standing there on that porch with balloons bobbing on the mailbox behind them like some cruel decoration mocking the whole scene. I looked at the 2 kids I had poured every spare dollar and every spare hour of my life into. Kids I'd sworn on my mother's grave would never feel like an afterthought the way I had. They stood there in a lifestyle, my signature, and my credit had helped hold up, completely blind to it, treating their own mother like a stranger who'd wandered onto the wrong lawn. I didn't argue. I reached over, took my wife's trembling hand, and turned back toward the truck. Behind us, I heard Brett mutter something to Melissa, and honestly, the tone told me everything the words didn't need to. They wanted to be left alone. And by the following month, they were going to get exactly that, in ways they hadn't thought all the way through. If you've been with this channel a while, you know exactly where a story like this tends to go. Drop a comment and let me know where you're tuning in from tonight, and go ahead and hit that subscribe button while you're at it. The drive home felt longer than the drive down, which didn't make any physical sense, but grief does strange things to a clock. Donna sat beside me, silent, staring out at the mountains going by, tears running steady down her face without a single sound coming out of her. I've seen my wife cry plenty of times over 34 years at her father's funeral, at Melissa's high school graduation, once during an insurance commercial that I still tease her about to this day. I had never once seen her cry like that. Silent. Hollow. Like something inside her had simply stopped running. We didn't talk until somewhere past the French Broad River Bridge, when she finally spoke, staring out at the water like it might hand her an answer. "I bought her a hope chest when she was 12, she said quietly. "Filled it up over the years. Quilts, my grandmother's china, a few pieces of jewelry. I used to imagine the day she'd finally need all of it." Her hands were shaking in her lap. "Not this. I never imagined this. What do you say to that?" I reached over, took her hand off her lap, and held it the rest of the drive. We didn't say another word until we pulled into our own driveway back in Asheville. We walked into the house a little after 2 that afternoon, and the quiet hit different than it ever had before. 31 years in that house, countless evenings coming home from Little League games and dance recitals, every ordinary moment that used to fill those rooms up with noise. That day the silence had teeth in it. Donna made it 2 steps past the front hall before her knees just gave out from under her. She went down onto the living room floor, right there on the braided rug her own mother had given us as a wedding gift, and she cried the way you cry when somebody dies. I got down on the floor with her. Didn't say anything clever. Didn't try to fix it, which if you know me at all is something close to a miracle, because fixing things is the only language I've ever really spoken fluently. I just held her while she cried into my shoulder, and I let myself ask the question that had been chasing me the whole drive home. Where'd we go wrong, Donna? I gave those kids everything I never had growing up. Donna lifted her head, eyes red and swollen, and said the only thing that made a lick of sense that whole terrible day. "No, Walt. You didn't turn them into anything." She wiped her face with the back of her hand. "You handed them a life they never had to earn a single piece of, and people who never earn something never learn to be grateful for it." We didn't sleep much that night. We talked, really talked, the kind of talking 34 years of marriage lets you do without needing to explain half of it out loud. We agreed on one thing above everything else: whatever happened from here on out, we'd move together. No solo decisions, no guilt trips down memory lane weakening either one of us at the wrong moment. By sunrise, we were of one mind. And Walter Pierce, lined up with his wife, is not a man you want standing between you and a telephone. I called my lawyer, Ray Delgado, at exactly 8:15 that morning. Man's handled Pierce & Sons contracts for close to 18 years. He knows the difference between my business voice and my something else voice, and this was clearly something else. "Walt," he said, "you sound like a man who hasn't slept." "I need my name off that auto loan for Melissa's Audi, I mean her SUV," I said, catching myself. "Today, before this thing goes any further into collections." There was a pause on the line, the kind of pause a good lawyer gives you when he wants to be sure you're not about to do something you'll regret come Friday. You understand, once you pull your name, the bank's going to reassess the loan on her credit alone. Given what you told me about her payment history, that's likely to mean repossession inside 30 days. "I've never been more certain of anything in my life," I said. Ray didn't push back further. By 10 that morning, the paperwork was filed. By that afternoon, it was processed. For the first time in 3 years, there was no Walter Pierce standing quietly behind that loan like scaffolding nobody ever bothered to thank. They wanted to prove they didn't need me hovering over their lives. I decided to hand them the closest thing to proof a man in my position could offer. I didn't hear a word for 4 days, which honestly felt almost funny given everything that had just happened. The same silence that had nearly wrecked me 2 weeks earlier now felt like the most peaceful stretch I'd had in a month. The call came on a Tuesday morning. I was out in the shop running a board through the planer when my phone buzzed with Cody's name on the screen, not Melissa's. I let it ring twice before I picked up. Dad. His voice came out tight and clipped, a man trying hard to sound calm and failing at it. There's something wrong with Melissa's loan. The bank's saying they're sending someone out to repo the SUV if she doesn't bring the account current by Friday. Did you know about this? There's no mistake, son, I said, keeping my voice level, almost gentle. I pulled my name off as cosigner 8 days ago. Dead silence on the line. You did what? Dad, why would you do that? She can't afford that payment on her own, you know that. She told me to leave her alone, I said. So I am. Dad, please. You've got to call them. Tell them it was some kind of mix-up. It wasn't a mix-up, Cody. I'll talk to you soon. I hung up. They didn't wait around for a tow truck to show up in the driveway with the neighbors watching. I heard the details later, secondhand, through a mutual friend of Cody's. Melissa spent 2 straight days on the phone trying to refinance on her own income alone, calling 3 different banks, getting turned down by every single one. Eventually, she just drove the SUV down to the dealership herself and traded it in on something she could actually afford, a used compact with 110,000 miles on it and a check engine light that never turned off. There's a quiet kind of clarity that comes from watching natural consequences finally arrive at a door that had been propped open by your own signature for far too long. Because here's a thing nobody tells you about being a fixer your whole life: the moment you stop fixing, the world doesn't fall apart, it just gets honest again real fast. I didn't stop there either. Over the following couple of weeks, I looked at every other thread still tying my name to theirs. You can't just cross your name off a co-signed lease with a pen, but I called our family's insurance agent and pulled my name off the umbrella policy that had been covering Cody's motorcycle, the one Donna never even knew he'd bought back. Premium tripled overnight on his own. Next, I called the credit union that held the small business loan I'd guaranteed for Brett's landscaping company, the one Melissa had asked me to co-sign back before I'd even met the man in person. I formally withdrew my guarantee in writing. The credit union froze his draw line and gave him 30 days to find new collateral or pay the balance in full. I didn't do a single bit of it with anger in my chest. I just let the banks and the credit unions do exactly what they're built to do. Look at my children's actual standing on their own 2 feet, without my shadow stretched out over the top of it. They showed up at our door about 5 weeks later. They didn't have much of a choice left. Hendersonville had chewed through them fast once my money quietly stepped out of the picture. Brett's landscaping business folded within a month without that draw line propping it up, and with the wedding deposits on a venue they could no longer afford. Melissa and Cody drove up together in that beat-up compact, looking like a couple of ghosts of the confident kids I'd raised. They didn't call ahead. They just pulled into our driveway on a Sunday evening, and Cody was the one doing the knocking, hard and fast, his face pale and furious, pounding like the door owed him something. I opened it, let them both in, sat them down in the living room, same room where Donna had come apart on the floor 5 weeks earlier, and let them say whatever they'd driven 45 minutes to say. Melissa went first, and she was crying before she even made it through the doorway. Real tears this time, not the performance kind. Though it took me a minute to remember that real tears don't automatically mean real accountability. How could you do this to us? Her voice broke on every other word. We're your family, Dad. You're ruining our lives over one bad afternoon, and you know Brett and I are supposed to be getting married in the spring. One bad afternoon? I asked, my voice entirely empty of anything but plain fact. You watched your mother and me call you for 3 days straight while we were sick with worry, Melissa. You told me yourself you ignored us on purpose, to teach me some kind of lesson. Now real life's teaching you one. Her face shifted then, grief curdling fast into something uglier, a kind of cornered panic. You're just a controlling old man who can't stand that we don't need you anymore, she said, her voice climbing. You've always been like this. This whole thing is some sick payback because we didn't invite you to a party. I didn't flinch. I don't want to see either one of you fail, sweetheart. But you told me to leave you alone, to stop hovering, to stop acting like a hero every time I helped you out. So I'm just honoring what you asked for. If you truly don't need me, then you don't need my name backing your loans. And you don't need my signature covering Brett's business either. That's not payback. That's you getting exactly what you said you wanted. Melissa's jaw tightened. I watched her cast around for another angle, the way a man pats down his pockets for keys he already knows aren't there. Mom wouldn't have let this happen, she said, desperate now, pivoting hard toward her mother. You're doing this behind her back, aren't you? You're punishing us because you're bitter about getting older. That's when Donna stepped in from the kitchen doorway, arms crossed, voice steadier than I'd heard it in weeks. Your father and I are on the exact same page, she said, firm and solid, not one crack running through it. We talked this through together. We agreed to honor what you asked us for. Cody, who'd stayed quiet up till then, finally cracked. Mom, you can't be serious. I stood up from my chair, walked over, and put my hand gently on Donna's shoulder. So here we are, I said. We're leaving you two alone, just like you asked. Good luck to both of you. I watched something in their faces finally understand, really understand, that this wasn't a phase, wasn't a bluff, wasn't a father who was going to cave the second his kids cried hard enough sitting on his own couch. I listened to them blame me for a mess they'd built with their own two hands. They tried to make me feel guilty for the repo, for the business folding, for every choice that had been entirely theirs to make. But I felt nothing but a strange, settled clarity. These were the same two kids who'd stood on a porch and told me I was smothering them. The same two who'd broken their own mother's heart without so much as a flinch. They hadn't wanted my help when I was offering it freely. They just wanted somebody to point a finger at once they realized they couldn't manage it alone. They left that evening without another word between us. I heard the car doors slam out in the driveway, heard the engine fade off down the street, and Donna and I stood there in that living room in a silence that, for the first time in over a month, didn't feel like grief anymore. It felt like something closer to peace. I went back to see Ray Delgado the following week, and this time it had nothing to do with any loan. I want to rewrite the will, I told him, sliding my coffee cup aside to make room for the folder he'd brought out. Start to finish. He looked up at me over the top of his glasses, the same careful look he'd given me the day I pulled Melissa's loan guarantee. How thorough are we talking, Walt? If I go first, everything passes to Donna. If she goes first, everything comes back to me. And if we're both gone, I paused, and for the first time in weeks I felt something settle into place in my chest instead of tearing loose from it. Not $1 goes to the kids. Instead, I want it set up funding trade school scholarships. Kids from single-parent homes who never had anybody backing them up the way I tried to back mine up. Kids who'd give anything just to have one adult in their corner who actually showed up. That's where it all goes. Ray didn't ask me to sleep on it. He just nodded, made his notes, and got to work. My own father walked out on us when I was 9 years old, and never once looked back. I grew up without him, and swore my own children would never know that particular flavor of empty. And somehow, in giving them everything I never got the chance to have, I raised two kids who took a father who showed up for every single day of their lives entirely for granted. My children don't need my money. They've made that plenty clear on their own. But there are young people out there right now, kids working double shifts, trying to put themselves through a trade program with nobody in their corner, who'd trade almost anything for one call from somebody who actually meant it when they said they were proud of you. My legacy isn't going to the two who told me to leave them alone on a porch in Hendersonville. It's going to the ones who'd actually give something to have a father worth calling. Months passed after all that. The calls from Melissa and Cody slowed down to almost nothing, and then stopped altogether. I heard through an old customer of mine, whose daughter still keeps up with Melissa on social media, that she and Brett called off the wedding sometime in the fall. That Cody had moved back into a rented room above somebody's garage on the other side of town. No more shiny black Audi in anybody's driveway. Struggling, apparently, learning the hard way what a monthly budget actually looks like when your name isn't riding on somebody else's signature underneath it. I won't sit here and tell you it didn't sting to hear all that. It did. Some nights it still does, if I'm honest with you. But every time that particular ache creeps back in, I remember that porch. I remember leave us alone. I remember watching my wife's face come apart over a hope chest that never got its moment, and the ache settles right back down, where it belongs. Donna and I sit out on our back porch most evenings now, right around sundown. Coffee in hand, watching the light go soft and gold over the same Asheville backyard where two kids once learned to ride bikes. I stayed up half the night putting together with an Allen wrench and a bad set of instructions. She reached over one evening, not too long ago, and set her hand on top of mine, the way she's done 1,000 times across 34 years, and I looked over at her and understood something plain and true. My father left when I was 9, and I spent the better part of my life trying to become the man he never stuck around long enough to be. But somewhere along the way, I lost sight of the fact that the only person I truly needed to look after was the woman sitting right there beside me the whole entire time. My kids have their own lives now. They made that about as clear as a person can make something, standing on that porch back in June. And my wife and I, we've still got each other. And it turns out, at the end of the day, that's more than enough to build a life on. If this one hit home for you, go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and let me know down in the comments where you're watching from tonight. I'll see you folks on the next one.